And we can start. So, hello everyone for joining this webinar. My name is Giulio Mazzolo from the Copernicus Support Office, and it's a pleasure for me to be moderating this webinar today. This is the second webinar of our series of webinars that will showcase interesting applications and benefits of Copernicus for our society and for our world and lives. And today, particularly, we will be focusing on how Copernicus data can be used for the preservation of cultural heritage. And we will have 3 speakers, and in a moment, plus 2 other speakers for introduction. And in a moment, we will introduce them. Before we start, I just want to inform everyone that to post during the webinar will be used an app called Slido. And as Slido can be used, we will use it also to share some questions to the audience, to launch some polls that people can answer. And it's also the app that the audience can use to ask questions, for example. So if you have any questions, you can type them at any moment through Slido. And then we will pose the question to the speakers after their presentations in the dedicated Q&A sessions. If you are using WebEx as installed on your computer, so if you downloaded the app, you should see a button called Apps, and clicking on that, you will be able to see and open Slido and post the question. Otherwise, if you're connected to the browser, so you didn't install the app, but you're using your browser, you can to reach out to Slido, you can use the following link that I will now paste in the chat, and use this code to be able to pose questions. So, and before we start and before we introduce our speakers, I would like to ask a question just to start getting to know our audience a bit better. So I will launch a poll, and you will be invited to tell us in which sector you're currently working or studying in. So you can start typing your answers in the poll. And in the meantime, I will show the agenda with you. Just 1 second, I will share my screen. Here we are. Now you should see the agenda. So basically, we are now here in the first part, the welcome session by me. We will then have an introduction by Luca Fazano from DEFIS, from the European Commission, and then opening remarks by Anna Sidorenko, who is the head of cultural heritage protection at Unesco. And then we will start with our 3 presentations for today. The first one will be given by Daniele Spizzichino from the Higher Italian Institute for the Protection and Research of the Environment. We will then have a presentation from Stelios Bollanos from Planetek Hellas. And then finally, a presentation by Kyriacos Themistocleous, who is Director of External Affairs and Business Development at the Eratosthenes Center of Excellence, and is also Senior Researcher at Cyprus University of Technology. As you can see, after each presentation, there will be the chance for the audience to ask questions. Not only through Slido, you can also raise your hand, and then we can unmute you. And after that, we will have the closing remarks, and we should be done in approximately 1 hour. So I will now stop sharing my screen. Okay. In the meantime, we can have a look at the votes which have been casted by participants. I see there is somebody working in archaeology, remote sensing, cultural heritage, research in general. So it's nice that the audience is really into the topic of cultural heritage, because we hope we can share interesting information for you today. I think we can also stop the poll now. Thank you very much for sharing it. And we also would like to ask one last question before we pass the word to our speakers, which is to kindly rate your knowledge about Copernicus. So how well do you know Copernicus? And I see people are starting to vote. Thank you very much. And I think in the meantime, we can start with our first speaker, who is Luca Fazano. Luca is a seconded national expert in the Earth Observation Unit of the Directorate General for Defense Industry and Space of the European Commission. And previously, he has been the head of Earth Observation Missions Management Office and CSG, which is the Italian-Argentinian satellite system for disaster management and economic development, and for the Italian Space Agency. And he has also been involved in several international fora as a delegate alternate at the ESA Earth Observation Program Board, and as delegate at the ESA DOSTAC, and as advisor at the EUMETSAT Council. And he received a computer engineering degree at the Polytechnic University of Bari, and also a PhD in computer science, control, and geoinformatics at the University of Rome, Tor Vergata. So, Luca, thank you very much for joining us again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Giulio. Can you please confirm you can hear me and you can see the presentation live mode now?
Yes, I can see the presentation very well, and I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Giulio. Thank you to you, and thank you to all the Copernicus Support Office for the organization of this event. Also on behalf of the DEFIS, we want to welcome all the participants. We see that we are more than about 100 people today, so very thank you to all of you. That's also because the cultural heritage is a very important topic, a very interesting topic in the scientific community. And we as a commission gives a lot of importance to this topic. In my presentation, I want to briefly give you a brief introduction of the use of Copernicus data for the preservation of the cultural heritage, and then to leave the floor to Anna Sidorenko, of course, and then to the other speakers for the presentation of their work. Just a brief introduction of Copernicus. Copernicus is composed, as you probably know, of several satellites in orbit, so giving the so-called Sentinels data, but also composed of the data coming from the so-called Copernicus contributing missions, and finally composed of the in situ data. All together, these data are used for several applications. For example, from the so-called Copernicus services. These are the 6 Copernicus services. As you can see, there is climate, marine, land, and so on. There is no cultural heritage ad hoc services, but for sure we in sense that the users perform a lot of activities related to the Copernicus services, sometimes under different umbrella, in the sense that for example, there are a lot of activities on the Copernicus Emergency Management Services, and thanks to them, we can preserve in some way the cultural heritage goods in case of some fire, some earthquake, landslides, and so on. But also some applications, some activities in the atmosphere monitoring services. Thanks, for example, to the monitoring of the concentration of air pollution, of UV radiation, but also in the other services. I don't want to give you a lot of examples because for sure you know better than me the examples. So we don't have a specific Copernicus services. Why? Just a brief history. We in the 2017 we had a very interesting workshop some times ago, but the workshop was organized in order to collect the users' feedbacks, and also to propose and to understand what are their needs. And these are the outcomes of the workshop. So the outcomes is that Copernicus Core Service can be used in the field of cultural heritage for several scopes. For example, preventing conservation, for example, geomapping of cultural heritage, for example, as said, for the support to emergency intervention in historical sites. After this workshop, we funded as commission a PwC study in order to have an assessment of the status of the Copernicus services and activities in general in this field. And in order to have some, suggestion on the possible improvement for the future Copernicus system, but also data and applications. This is a very important and very interesting study, quite long, but anyway complete. And we asked some months later to some national experts to analyze this report, this study. And the conclusion of this Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force was that we don't really need of a dedicated the dedicated cultural heritage service. But at the same time, we need some enhancement or customization of the existing services in order to better exploit the Copernicus data in this field. I don't want to take too much time, but these are the next possible steps on our sides. So for sure, we have other activities in collaboration with other European Commission DG, for example, EAC or other DGs in general, in order to better use the satellite data and to evolve our system, for example, for the future Copernicus, to better fulfill the user's needs. But also for this reason, we organize this workshop, so to collect your needs and to understand what do you need in terms of data, of course, in terms of system, of course, so platforms, I don't know, cloud capabilities, I don't know, support data, I don't know, something like that. And so this is in conclusion our objective. With that, I would conclude this very brief introduction because I want to leave the floor and enough room to the other participants. And I will pass the floor to Giulio, I suppose, again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Luca, for this presentation. And maybe before we go to Anna, I just want to give a chance to the audience in case they have a question for Luca, if they would like to ask it. To ask a question, you can either use Slido and type the question there, or feel free to raise your hands and we will be able to unmute you. I'm checking if anyone has raised the hand. Not yet. Nothing on Slido for the moment. Okay, so maybe we can then pass yes, we have a question. Yes, the question is, I just put it live, so you should be able to see it. The question is whether it's possible to have the link to the report which was mentioned.
Yes, of course it is. I will copy in the chat.
Thank you, Luca.
It was anyway in the presentation, but it was difficult to catch, and so I will copy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luca. Okay, so I think there are no other questions, so I think we can pass it on to Anna. And I will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can give a brief introduction to Anna. Anna is head of Cultural Heritage Protection Treaties Unit of the Cultural and Emergency Entity at Unesco. She is in charge of the Secretariat of the 1954 Hague Convention and its two protocols for 1954 and 1999 for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. And recently, the Secretariat has conducted a research on rules and practices in the use of remote sensing technologies and also organized an expert meeting, Heritage from Space for Peace, as part of UNESCO. And the meeting developed, in particular, the meeting developed and adopted proposals of principles relating to remote sensing monitoring of cultural property within the framework of monitoring and supervision mechanism under the 1999 Second Protocol to the 1954 Hague Convention. And Anna, thank you again for joining us and for taking the time for this presentation. So I will pass it on to you then, and thank you again.
Thank you with this short introduction. Then I will develop this in my presentation. So good afternoon, dear participants, dear colleagues. It's of course a very pleasure for me to participate in this exchange and to provide you with an update information on UNESCO activity and our rich experience in using remote sensing technology for heritage protection. So let me start by expressing UNESCO appreciation on the increasing focus given by the EU to cultural heritage protection in the context of crisis. And this is reflected in the Council conclusion adopted on this topic last summer. And this year marks not only the 15th anniversary of the very well-known UNESCO World Heritage Convention, but also 15 years of civilian use of data collected by Earth observation satellites. And we can see that the links between heritage and space technology are becoming closer and closer. And satellite monitoring is particularly useful in the context of the implementation of the UNESCO Hague Convention for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict, to identify threats to cultural sites and especially those located in conflict zones and which may be inaccessible. This is, for instance, what UNESCO is doing now in the context of the conflict in Ukraine. We are currently monitoring damages to cultural heritage property in Ukraine by using remote sensing monitoring to observe all type of cultural heritage, but especially World Heritage property and sites included on the tentative list. And we are doing this in partnership with UNITAR UNUSAT. And with me, I have my colleagues, Maisa, Achok Youssef, which would present also the technical details during the question and answer session. So the Hague Convention is the first multilateral treaty dedicated exclusively to the protection of movable and immovable cultural heritage in all its forms in time of peace, but as well as during an armed conflict. And building on the experience gained in monitoring World Heritage property, UNESCO has broadened the spectrum of used satellite data to enhance the operationalization of this convention. As you mentioned in the introduction, the last June, an expert meeting, Heritage from Space for Peace, organized by UNESCO, addressed the specific issue of monitoring cultural property using remote sensing technology. And the expert meeting discussed legal and technical characteristics of the remote sensing technology. And acknowledging the immense capability of space-based remote sensing technology, and in particular in areas of armed conflict and the situation of occupation, the expert meeting proposed that the mechanism for monitoring cultural property by satellite remote sensing be guided by 4 principles. First is the principle of access to data gathered from remote sensing by satellite and use of satellite images. The second one is the principle of data sharing, then the principle of transparency, and then the principle of data protection and security. It was also recommended that UNESCO set up a working group with space agency and partners for the establishment of a charter on protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict, using the model of the International Charter on Space in Major Disasters, including a mechanism for collection of satellite images to assess the state of cultural property in zones of armed conflict. This context offers many avenues of reflection to move forward in the expansion of our partnerships, and in particular with the European Union Earth Observation Programme, Copernicus, so that the international community can be ready at all times to respond to the new challenges posed by armed conflict on heritage the source of our humanity, human identity. So thank you once again. And I will just also upload on the chat the links to the meeting results and the description of the principles I just mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. And also, as for Luca, I mean, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them. For Anna, in the meantime, I see that we received 2 questions right at the beginning of Anna's presentation, which are probably for Luca. So I will now put them live. The first question is, I mean, both of them are about the task force, the Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force mentioned by Luca. The first question is whether it would be possible to re-establish the task force and see whether there is now a need to establish dedicated Copernicus service for cultural heritage. So I will now put it live so that Luca, you should be able also to read it on Slido, or let me know if you want me to reread it.
No, I probably understand. I don't see the question, but it was about the task force and the need of the new task force and to a dedicated cultural heritage services.
Yep.
Okay, so for the first part, so the Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force would be possible in theory, of course. We should understand if it is needed, what would be its purpose, its objective. Because I said there is a very, I mean, complete and good work made by the previous task force. So if there is a new need of establish a new task force for a different objective, we can, of course, discuss, and if agree, we can do it. But if not, at the moment currently, I don't see any, I mean, urgent need to organize a new task force. But as I said, if needed, we can understand. The second part about the
dedicated
docs. Yes. Yeah. Also in this case, you can of course have a look at the analysis I have mentioned, and I have reported the link in the chat because it explained well why it is not necessary in dedicated services. It says because all the important activities are covered by the already existing services and by other applications. So it is the reason why it is not needed a dedicated service. In general, we don't create a service for each topic, of course, otherwise it would be really thousands and thousands of services. And in this case, we but also the national experts agree that it is not urgently needed. But also in this case, we are ready to discuss with all of you. So no prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. And there is also a second question related to the task force that we now put live on Slido. And it's about, this is probably easier to answer, if it's possible to have a link also to the page of the mentioned task force. So maybe if such a link is available, if you could paste it in the chat as you did for the other link.
Yes, I think that I've already done it, but if not, I can copy again.
Okay.
You can see the chat. All of you can see the chat. I think so.
Yeah, I can see the chat.
I see okay, perfect. So I see two links from Anna in case you have missed them. I can copy again the analysis task force report.
Okay, because I don't see the links from Anna, but probably it's just my visualization. But okay, if everyone else can see them, then that's fine, no problem. Okay, I get confirmation that they are there, so probably it's just my chat which is not showing them properly. Okay, so no problem, and thank you very much, Luca. I now have a look whether there are any questions for Anna that have arrived in the meantime. I see if anyone has raised his or her hand? Apparently not. Okay, so I think we are done with the first part of our webinars with the two introductions from Luca and Anna. Thank you very much again for that. And before we move to the second part with the three presentations from the other panelists, I would like to share one more poll from Slido, and it's whether you have ever used remote sensing data for work or research. And you can start casting your vote. See, somebody has already voted and said yes. And in the meantime, I can start introducing our next speaker, who is Daniele. Thank you, Daniele, for joining us. And Daniele holds a degree in environmental engineering from the University of Rome. And he also got a PhD on Earth System Science, specifically on environment, resources, and cultural heritage at the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. He also developed a very strong expertise in ICT. For example, in hydrological risk analysis, natural risk digital maps elaboration, Earth observation, GIS, geohazard and risk assessment, geotechnical modeling, and all applied to cultural heritage protection domains. He has worked and coordinated as a research and professional consultant, several research teamwork. And since the year 2000, his geotechnical engineering skills have been addressed to, in particular, executive design of cultural heritage, low impact mitigation measures, monitoring system implementation, such as remote sensing, satellite and traditional topographical network, natural hazard risk assessment, and protection plan for natural and cultural heritage. In particular, he has been extensively supporting national and international organizations such as Unesco, WMF, ICOMOS, and several research projects of the World Heritage sites, such as the Machu Picchu in Peru, or Aksum in Ethiopia, or the Easter Islands in Chile, and so on. He has published several articles in scientific journals, papers, and conference proceedings. He's a member of many associations, just to name a few, ICOMOS and AGI, ICL, and he's currently employed as first researcher and scientific advisor at ISPRA, at the Department for Geological Survey of Italy, and he's also adjunct professor to the UNESCO Chair on Prevention and Sustainable Management on Geohydrological Hazards. So congratulations on your career, Daniele, and thank you very much for your presentation. So the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to everybody. Good afternoon to everybody. You can see my slide?
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
Perfect. So I think that I will try to clarify a lot of questions concerning the Copernicus task force, because my speech is dealing completely dedicated to this activity. So, but before to start, let me jump just a little bit, in 5 years ago when we were young, wild, and free, without the pandemic, without all the problem during the last year. And I also attend this important meeting in 2017, the first Copernicus for Cultural Heritage Workshop. I was at the time the manager of a project, the name is Protego, that for the protection of cultural European UNESCO site using Earth observation techniques. So I present this project in this important meeting, and I resume my last slide of this meeting, because I give to all the floor some homework to implement for the next year. So let me check what about this homework for all of us. So my conclusion at the time was that all the European member states had to define the exposed element. So have in each country a collection of number, type, location of cultural heritage, possible using a homogeneous digital open source format. At the same time, we have to strong and implement the collection and the definition of the hazard, both natural and anthropogenic hazard. And I also try to define the importance of satellite in the space segment, no? So to the monitoring of this important issue like the cultural heritage. So we need dedicated and simple tools for the downstream services dedicated to monitoring environmental anthropogenic pressure on cultural heritage in order to pass from static to dynamic integrated risk scenario. No? So my presentation is how, if we are able during the last year to implement some of this homework. So what's going to happen? After 2017, by the end of 2018, the Copernicus User Forum proposed the institution of a Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force, no? Formalized by the committee. So the activities of the Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force was based on the outcomes of the study mentioned by Luca, Copernicus Services in Support to Cultural Heritage, developed by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and was aimed at identifying the best option to facilitate cultural heritage community access to Copernicus product. You can see the map of the member state that participate to this task force that was composed by national experts belonging from cultural heritage and Earth observation domain, and is officially coordinated by Italy and chaired by the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage. So we started from this important document from PricewaterhouseCoopers. This is, you can see that our roadmap of the 2 years of activity, now starting the end of 2018 until the beginning of 2020. We, of course, start with a map, the needs of the member state in the Earth observation domain, beyond those identified in the study of Pricewaterhouse. Then we complement, filter, aggregate, and codify the user need into specific requirement, okay? So from the needs to the requirement. We analyze how existing Copernicus data, services, and products could satisfy the identified requirements. We identify possible enhancement and customization of Copernicus product. And in the end of the activity, we also analyze possible synergies with national, European, and international solutions to fill the gaps. And at the end, we promote and we deliver the report to the European Commission. So what about the targets? The target was to consolidate the user need and define especially dimensional requirement in terms of temporal and spatial resolution. And also validate the best one of the 3 hypotheses envisaged by the study of Pricewaterhouse for accessing Copernicus data by the cultural heritage user. The 3 hypotheses at the end of the report was keep the current system for access to data by cultural heritage user, so no one action. Provide cultural heritage user with an interface that collects data from different core services. Create a new core services for cultural heritage. This is the 3 target of the study. So what we do is at the beginning we define with all the member states the needs, and we collect all the different needs from urban change monitoring and analysis of land impact, land change monitoring, geohazard, touristic pressure, monitoring of historical building, tourist variation of coastline, all the needs developed by different countries. Of course, we are talking about European countries, so the North Europe needs are different from the South Europe needs and so on, And all these needs, we define some domains of interest group user needs, and they are corresponding to the high-level user needs identified in the report of Pricewaterhouse study. We have 9 domains of interest, and we assemble and collect all the needs in these big 9 domains. The domains are for example, detection of underground archaeological sites through the study of natural environment, or mapping the cultural landscape of the site and identification of specific risks exposed to. So all the needs was linked to this high-level domain, okay? Of course, as Copernicus, this is a user-driven approach, so we have a stakeholder consultation process. So what we obtain is that we define 75 user needs that was filtered and analyzed. You can see here, for example, one of the needs that came from air pollution monitoring or anthropospheric humidity measurement, in which we assign the weight of important, we define the spatial resolution available, the temporal resolution, the requirement came from the stakeholder. So after that, we have a very strong, I think, 6 months of interaction by the Copernicus and trusted entities in order to verify, if these needs are a strong correlation with the services, 6 core Copernicus core services, So we start with an important gap analysis implementation because we want to know which of these needs are already or not compliant or covered by the existing parameter from the core services, And the main outcome of the gap analysis is that a considerable number of the identified requirements are already satisfied by the Copernicus core services and practices, okay? For example, the CLMS collects most of the requirement, and the cultural and the user community is highly required. So since 2018, the spatial resolution for most of the requirements are fulfilled, okay? We also make some analysis concerning the coverage of this parameter, if there are a global or they are pan-European and so on, which can, if we have a global or European coverage. I think this is one of the most important outcomes. You can see here the monitoring domain, okay, the services and all the user requirements satisfied. So you can see here, I will send you, of course, the link to the report and also the publication in which you can find all these parameters and the description of the approach, methodology, the questionnaire and so on. But you can see here that we are able to define which kind of domain are satisfied by services for each kind of parameter, okay? So this is what the task force implement. But let me show you some what was one of the main outcomes at member state national level. After the end of the task force in Italy, for example, we start to think how to implement this approach. We start, of course, in Italy by a very, very strong let me say, understanding of the problem of cultural heritage affected by, for example, natural hazard. We know in a very strong way number, typology, and distribution of more than 200,000 cultural heritage in Italy. We know exactly where landslide, flood, and seismic map are distributed. So we are able to match exposure, vulnerability, and hazard in order to define some risk scenario. Of course, this is a static risk scenario, So starting from this, in Italy, we are able to, for example, extract automatically what are the cultural data exposed, for example, to seismic hazard, So every year we are able to define some risk indicator for specific category of hazard and cultural heritage. So these promote a strong effort. So in 2021, our Ministry of Culture promoted a national extraordinary plan of Italian cultural heritage monitoring. So we start to define a sort of hub, a dashboard, in which combine all the information came from external system, like Copernicus or other data set, to implement this sort of knowledge hub at national level. So this is a sort of pilot at national scale after the implementation of the task force. So at the moment, we are trying to sign the road for the next implementation of this task force. Of course, let me say something that, for example, in order to pass from static to dynamic analysis and monitoring, the European ground motion services that at the moment still last 2-3 months is still available, could be a very important challenge, because at the moment we are able to define, for example, every month, every 6 months, the displacement at European level from to the ground motion. So we are able to connect and link this kind of information to the static map and define something like a dynamic monitoring to the cultural heritage. So let me conclude with some highlights and remarks, try also to make some answer to some question. So some efforts are required to customize current Copernicus product on the basis of the identified needs. A unique service access point will be of benefit to permit users to exploit a single infrastructure where Copernicus product and related information are collected and made accessible, example via a network service, being the access to information and its management, a critical issue for the update. This is the highlight of the report. Ready-to-use integrated information related to the land cover use, geohazard, climate, as well as atmospheric parameters will allow a better understanding of the specific phenomena affecting the site. The access to very high-resolution imagery to test innovation application aimed at improving monitoring capacity and novel application is required by the cultural heritage research community, having high specific thematic and geomatic skill. So the main issue are a European Cultural Heritage Advisory Board composed for experts representative for all EU member states should be established to advise the Copernicus User Forum about the cultural heritage user need. The Copernicus Academy network could support new generation with specific academic course on cultural heritage monitoring through academic courses, including both Earth observation and Copernicus service capacity elements, including, for example, the FPQ action and running. There is a high potential for Copernicus to stimulate substantial growth of the cultural heritage downstream market, the creation of cultural heritage thematic hub, so not a new core service, but a thematic hub where different players can interact for the different definition and development of user requirement based service would support the market development process. You can see here the publication of the activity of the task force with the link, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Daniele. Maybe if you have the link at hand, you can paste it in the chat as well.
Yes, of course.
So that participants can go and check it. Thank you so much. So now we have some time for some questions for Daniele from the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on Slido or in the chat, or to raise your hand if you want to post the question yourself. Checking if there are any questions. Okay, I think there are no questions, not even in the chat. Okay, so but there are no questions for Daniele. In any case, if the audience has any more questions, feel free to post them also later during the webinar. And yes. Okay, thank you again, Daniele. So now we can go to our next speaker, Stelios. And so I will briefly introduce Stelios. There is a question apparently. Sorry. I don't know if it's, yes, now I see it. Okay. So Daniele, we have indeed a question for you. It has just been posted. How do you estimate the exposure for cultural heritage in Italy? I will now paste it live.
The problem is not the exposure, but the problem is the vulnerability. The exposure is the presence of different typology of exposed elements. So we have a list of typology. So we have, for example, historical building, archaeological site, museum, and so on. So we have a list of different typology of exposed elements. Okay, listed. We have a very strong website. The name is Carta del Rischio, in which you can see a lot of this information of these 200,000 heritage in Italy. Of course, we are working on the vulnerability of this exposed element, concerning vulnerability concerning different hazards. So we have vulnerability for seismic hazard, we have vulnerability for flood, we have vulnerability for landslide. So we are working on this part of the the risk scenario. So at the moment, the exposure in Italy is only number, typology, location, and so on of these different heritage.
Thank you, Daniele. Maybe also for the Carta del Rischio, if you have a link that you can post in the chat, maybe that could be also interesting for the audience. So I will check if in the meantime anyone else has posted any questions. There's a comment in the chat in the meantime for everyone to read it from Pierluigi. Thank you, Pierluigi, for posting it. And in the meantime, we can move to the next speaker. So Stelios, thank you again, Daniele, for your contribution. We can go to Stelios. Stelios is the co-founder and director of Planetek Hellas, which is a Greek space SME employing 25 highly qualified men and women. He has almost 2 decades of experience in managing Earth observation service provision to various institutional users, such as the European Space Agency, the EU Commission, the European Union Satellite Center, the European Environment Agency, the Joint Research Center, JRC, and other important customers at the national and international level. He has very good knowledge of the European and Greek Earth observation market, and very good knowledge of the Greek domestic demand for Earth observation-based products and services. And this will be the main topic also of his presentation. So thank you again, Stelios, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, a confirmation that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see the first slide of your presentation.
Excellent. So thank you again for the invitation. It's an excellent event and very useful for the community and for the Copernicus itself, for the objective of the Copernicus to increase the uptake within the economy and society. So my task is here today to bring you some examples of the so-called core and downstream products for cultural heritage, and just to be as much as possible to the point, a short intro on what is core. Was mentioned initially by Luca. Core Copernicus products and services are those that are the 6 basic services of Copernicus that are entrusted to the entities who have the task to manage and to provide them to the ecosystem and to the community, with their main characteristic being the full, free, and open services policy. So all the core, what we call core Copernicus products, are provided fully free and open to the community, apart from some restrictions that apply to the security service. Instead, on the other hand, the downstream products are those that might receive as an input also what the core Copernicus services produce, or might receive as an input these initial products, and add value to these products and come up with what we call downstream services. As an example of this is our Equus platform, and there are many others in the market, with the main characteristics, of course, as they add value to what it is free and open. It is the fact that, of course, come at a certain cost, usually by subscription and so on and so forth. I choose now to give you some examples I took from the emergency management service, the one that is managed by the Joint Research Center in collaboration with the Emergency Response Coordination Center, the famous ERCC of DG ECHO. In specific, the component named Risk and Recovery Mapping, which has worldwide coverage and aims to pre-disaster and post-disaster activities, supporting a variety of actors with two types of products, those called the standard and those called the flex, with a variety of portfolio of products for both these components, the standard and the flex. The standard, as it is also implied by the word itself, it is well-defined products that have a little room for alteration during the implementation of them. Instead, the flex have a lot more room for ad hoc work every time, and maybe also with the interaction of the final user. And I chose an example here from the last activation of the emergency management service, the flex component, where the Greek Cultural Heritage Authorities, through the national point of contact that is always in Europe, the Civil Protection Authority in charge, activated the service for the Delphi and the ancient Olympia archaeological site here in Greece, targeting wildfire, flash floods, plain floods, earthquakes, landslide, and soil erosion, for which a big series of product of maps were produced. As in this example, I'm showing the flood risk, the forest fire risk, and the earthquake risks for the ancient Olympia site. Which product, and I advise all the participant to go and visit the website that I have put at the end, are all provided fully free and open, and can give good examples for that can be food for thought in their applications of Copernicus in cultural heritage. Finally, this is an activity, this is an industrial activity, this is an activity that the JRC is based on two industrial consortium in which we are also part. Every time there is a need for JRC, this goes to the industries that are working for it, and these two industrial consortium in competition, in open competition between them, bid and finally produce the requested map. Giving another example of core product, this time from the land service, the one managed by the European Environmental Action, was somehow mentioned also by Daniele. It is the famous now European Ground Motion Service, the EGMS, and in this case, the EGMS. First of all, the EGMS is a product that provides a consistent and reliable information regarding natural and anthropogenic ground motion. So, targeting movements at the level of millimeter on points on the ground that should supposed to be stable. And in this case, I've brought here an example from a very noted site, cultural heritage site, all of it in Venice, in northern Italy, where all these simple dots represent points that should be stable, but instead on time, during the time they report a specific movement that shouldn't be there. Or it should, but this is up to the user to decide if there is a need to go and monitor and inspect the specific point and correlate this Earth observation based information with a potential risk of the specific site. Another example of downstream product in this time is coming from our platform that I mentioned previously, the Equus platform, for which we have built also a vertical solution for cultural heritage. In this case, this is a work done by together with the Center of Research in Sardinia, where the service was activated to work on the nuraghe in Sardinia in order to come up with a multi-scale monitoring based on Earth observation data to support the conservation of the ancient megalithic buildings in the area. And during this work, a multi-temporal interferometric analysis was performed, in the sense that SAR data coming from Sentinel satellites, Sentinel-1 and 2 satellites, the Sentinel-1 A and B satellite were performed, but also very high resolution SAR data were used in order to come up with this monitoring of the small movements that I mentioned previously, and give the proper input to the manager of the site regarding with the potential risk of this very important cultural heritage site. Overall, I need to say here, it's good to say that the platform itself, the platform that was used, Equus that I mentioned before for cultural heritage, it is an example of downstream services that provide, of downstream product that provides to the user not so much an information that is based on the depiction of the Earth observation image itself, but mostly on what it should be useful for the user to understand. And this is the chart and the tables that are able to give this information in a way that it can make sense, it can have an impact on decision making. The satellite image itself, it's not that much of importance. It is, of course, of absolute value, but is not what the user needs to see. The user needs to see as much as possible information that is able to integrate in their decision-making procedure. And this is exactly here. It is a very good example of what platforms, nowadays platforms such as Equus, but I say again that there are also others, tend to give to the user, time frames of information, charts that are able to help them in decision making. I brought for the presentation some other examples from other projects made in the past with the involvement of cultural heritage authorities, and this is what I want to underline. Earth observation and space overall needs is a lot about innovation, is a lot about R&D, and it's important the fact that authorities from the cultural heritage community, users at the end of the day, are very active and have been very active the last years in order to work and invest, spend their time to identify these solutions that can space bring to their everyday job and to the cultural heritage community as a whole. So I brought here an example in specific of the work done also by the Institute of Marine Archaeology here in Greece and the Soprintendenza del Mare, the Authority of Cultural Heritage Protection at the region of Sicily, through which, in combination with the previously shown panel of experts partners in the Ithaca project that was also presented, I had the luck together with Daniele 5 years ago to present it in the first workshop of the European Commission in specific for cultural heritage. This was an example from the work done at that time regarding the coast erosion with very high resolution done here in Greece with, of course, the lead of the Institute of Marine Archaeology. Another example in the same activity was the bathymetry maps produced with very high resolution optical data, which is I know very well that the bathymetry maps for very shallow waters are important aspect for cultural heritage archaeological sites that are near the coast, on the coast, or a bit submerged. And this is another example from the Egadi Islands in Sicily, work done by our friends in DHI Grass. Another very good example is the work done from the Institute of Greek Tourism Confederation, in specific from the support that they are receiving from the Academy of Athens in the framework of the Criterion project, which is part of the Shape initiative. Through the Criterion, the INSETE, the Institute of Greek Tourism Confederation, provides to the interested, to anyone interested, for 20 historical sites in Greece, as defined that were defined UNESCO Cultural Heritage Monuments, short-term forecast through also that are also based to the C3S Copernicus service, the Copernicus Climate Change Service provided by the ECMWF. Important also is the work done by the Urban Heritage Climate Observatory. That is a group on Earth observation pilot initiative led by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the World Heritage Center and the Greek Geo Office. A work that the main objective is to bring together experts and experts on both sides, cultural heritage and Earth observation, in order to define the best solutions that will have the best impact on the preservation of cultural heritage monuments. Again, another example of a research activity, but demonstrative of this activeness of the cultural heritage community. In this case, the Cultural Heritage Authority of the region of the Rhode Island in the Aegean Sea here in Greece have worked together with the National Technical University of Athens and produced ground deformation map in order to monitor the very important valley graves and cave sanctuaries in Rodini, and the very important monument of the Bridge of Roman Times that is still being used. And they have also created a very good video promoting the event, promoting their work, which I was lucky to see, and with the result that I was mentioning before. So what you need as a user is to come up with decision making, and at this case the result of the work provided input to the authorities in charge to take decisions relative to the diminution of to the diminution of the traffic on the bridge that is still used. And I very much thank the colleague from Eurisi that mentions me that indeed this was a video produced by Eurisi, and I take the opportunity here to congratulate Eurisi for the work that they're doing for the uptake of the Copernicus and in general Earth observation products and services throughout the spectrum of the economy and society, not only cultural heritage. Important also the work done in by a group of industrial and research institutions here in Greece in the Climascape project, which objective is the sensitivity to climate to use, of course, Earth observation products and data in support to the extraction of critical information for defining sensitivity to climate change and vulnerability to risk, and as enhanced due always to climate change. Also, a very good example is the work done by the University of Kiel. Professor Nassos Vafidis has a long-lasting experience in the domain, where they have analyzed the impact of sea level rise on World Heritage Site, especially in the Mediterranean area, by taking into account 4 different scenarios related to sea level rise, estimate of 100-year extreme water level and local sea level rise. And they have translated these scenarios and correlated it with models related to flood extent and depth, and by assessing at the same time flood and the erosion risk. This is the result from the flood risk in relation to World Heritage Sites in the Mediterranean, with 40 of them being at risk higher than 82%, as sorry, with 40 of them being part of the study, and 80 and as we see here, and as we would expect, 9 of them, especially in the northern Adriatic part, where Venice is, and I was showing before, are at very high risk. And the erosion risk at the same time, part of the same work, which I chose to be part of this presentation. I think it's a considerable amount of work and very relevant to what we are discussing today. This was a good pass to the another activity that is that has been taking place the last year as part of the evolution of the Copernicus Services, the activity called Equus, European Coastal Flood Awareness System. That is that is an activity with 11 institutions working in order to define a pilot activity with the objective to come up with a coastal flood awareness system. And these are a couple of maps, mapping product examples in Ebro, in Spain, and in Girona. Again, on one hand, to assess immediately the result of a flooding event in case of a storm or something like that, and not only that, but also come up with models which would have measure the flood extent and assess the impact of this by taking into account population, but also sites of interest, which could also be cultural heritage site in one case, and mapping and displacement of coastline in the same activity in an automatic way. These are objectives of this ECFAS project regarding pre-disaster, post-disaster, and on-demand monitoring and coastal erosion of coast and cost recovery. So, in a nutshell, and concluding, to take home, as I said, I try to give some examples, and I believe that through what I showed, it is clear that the cultural heritage represents a great opportunity for the further uptake of the Copernicus program, both on the core side and the downstream side. This is one thing. And second, and very much important also, I believe, the cultural heritage users community are so active that they really deserve an ad hoc effort from Copernicus. So that it must be a cross-cutting, a way of putting together in a cross-cutting way all the products from the various services, if not, of course, if not under the umbrella of an autonomous core service, as very well Daniele presented below. So we need to put in place an initiative that will gather the products from the various services, from the various core services, and with the proper work will make these the most easily accessible for the user community, and this will be a win-win on one side for Copernicus and for its uptake, on the other side for the cultural heritage user community, in order to have the most of the benefit from this huge European investment. And with this, I will thank you very much and apologize for the time it took me more.
Thank you, Stelios. Great presentation, and very nice inputs, definitely. Given that we are running a bit late, what I would suggest is that we move to the next speaker straight away, and we leave all the questions also for Stelios and the other questions that we have received for Daniele in the meantime to the end, so that Kyriacos can now present his work, and people can still be around. And in case we don't manage to ask all the questions, the people who post them can always send us an email to the Copernicus Support Office, and we can try to liaise with the speaker so that the questions can be answered offline. So thank you again, Stelios. I would now pass the word to Kyriacos, and I can briefly introduce Kyriacos as well. Kyriacos is the Director of External Affairs and Business Development of the Eratosthenes Center of Excellence. He's also the Project Manager of the Horizon 2020 Teaming Excelsior project for establishing a Center of Excellence in Earth Surveillance and Space-Based Monitoring of the Environment. Kyriacos is also a Senior Researcher and Specialist Scientist at the Department of Civil Engineering and Geomatics and of the Cyprus University of Technology, and currently has over 300 publications in peer-reviewed journals, book chapters, and conference proceedings with more than 2,000 citations. He has participated as a chairman in several international conferences, as well as a reviewer and editor for several scientific journals. And he's also the president of the Cyprus Remote Sensing Society and treasurer of the Cyprus branch of the International Council on Monuments and Sites. So congratulations also on Kyriacos and the other speakers, of course, for their impressive curricula. And yeah, the floor is yours, Kyriacos, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
I would like to thank Copernicus for inviting me today. And of course, the two previous speakers, Daniele and Stelios, did a good job on explaining how, the cultural heritage, how Copernicus can take over the cultural heritage, and how can assist the cultural heritage in providing Earth monitoring. Now, I would like to stress the significance of why we use Earth observation for cultural heritage. And usually we use that for detection of crop marks, soil marks. We're doing a lot of work in research on actually identifying archaeological places using this type of, using Earth observation in order to detect where archaeological places are. Monitoring archaeological sites, and here I would like not only to say that it's important to monitor the archaeological sites, but document architecture, the archaeological sites and cultural heritage monuments. Also, Earth observation is really useful for risk assessment, archive information, and especially with time series information, we can go back and see the differences between the time in the past and the time that we are right now, and the evolution of cultural heritage sites. Of course, micro movements, looting is another issue that we're trying to monitor and bring up issues for protecting the cultural heritage sites. I would like to say that there are a lot of cultural heritage sites, and here you can see from the UNESCO World Heritage Site Map. Just only in Europe, there are more than 1,000 World Heritage sites that are under protection of UNESCO. The significance of monitoring documentation, we can see especially for Palmyra, here in Temple of Bel, which is destroyed by ISIS in 2015. And this is was an unfortunate event that we realized as a community that we didn't have documentation. We didn't have the documentation of significant cultural heritage sites. And you can see here how the Temple of Palmyra was, and how after the destruction, how it was. So here we can see actually the significance of using Earth observation and significance of documenting and monitoring cultural heritage sites. Just to bring up in my part in Cyprus, how we do it. Well, of course, we're really aware. We have 10,000 years of history, and we know the significance of actually monitoring and conserving cultural heritage sites. So we use Earth observation here in order to have this capability of actually have that type of documentation. Recently, here in Eratosthenes, that I'm a part of the Center of Excellence and the Cyprus University of Technology. We documented more than 100 churches here in the area that we are, in order to have that kind of documentation and keep it for the future generations. Here you can see the GIS system that we have. That we not only we have the cultural heritage sites, but we have information about these type of sites, and we're trying to monitor this using the Earth observation images that we get. Now, cultural heritage is vulnerable to geological disaster, and I think Daniele at his presentation stressed that. We have disasters that they come for earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, erosion, and catastrophic landslides. So it's really important to use and monitor, use information, especially for Copernicus, inside to monitor these cultural heritage sites. And not only that, but the Earth observation can provide us leads in order to go there, visit, take more, ground-based data collection and so on. So Earth observation is really important, especially whenever we're taking in consideration the major risks that we analyze. And these, they have a lot of information in terms of history, topography, geology, environment and vegetation, land use, urban development, which is a major threat, especially to cultural heritage, that they are affecting cultural heritage sites. And here you can see a map with the overall risk, especially in the Paphos area, here in Cyprus, that not only we're trying to monitor, but we're trying to find the risk associated with different issues that we have in the island. And these issues can be coming from natural hazards, geological hazards. Natural hazards can be from landslides, and not only that, but earthquakes that we have a lot, as you can see here from the seismicity map of Cyprus. A lot of seismic, activity around the region that they are affecting the cultural heritage sites. And not only that, but you can see how this seismic activity is projecting to the Mediterranean region in Greece, Italy, and so on. So this is something that cultural heritage sites are affected. Here is not only that, but we have erosion. Here you can see pictures from the Tomb of the Kings, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And you can see now from the natural hazards, especially from erosion, and this site is next to the sea, how this is affecting the cultural heritage and archaeological sites here in Cyprus. And here, what we're trying to do, using the Earth observation information to create landslide maps, erosion maps, salinity maps, the tectonic activity, urban expansion, road network proximity to the cultural heritage sites, any drainage work that may affect the cultural, but one more, the fires that they're really affecting, especially now with the climate change, that you can see more the expansion of fires around the cultural heritage sites. Now, we're using Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 to Copernicus in order to monitor these sites. Not only that, but to understand and monitor and protect, which is really important. Here you can see a lot of examples. Here is the Paphos archaeological map with the archaeological site, that you can see that we're trying not only to identify, but only to, and also to protect and monitor these cultural heritage sites. Another site that we apply, especially Sentinel-1, is the Hirokitia World Heritage Site that we're trying to monitor using SAR images in order to use interferometry and persistent scattering in order to monitor the cultural heritage sites. We're talking here about the Neolithic settlement occupying the 7th to the 4th millennium BC. And as I said before, we have here a lot of cultural heritage sites, a lot of archaeological heritage from 10,000 years ago. This is one of the sites that we are trying to monitor through the Protico that Daniele mentioned before. That was one project that we had the opportunity to address the importance of SAR images, importance of persistent scattering to the archaeological site. And here is one of the examples that not only we use the INSAR monitoring, but we use other means of field monitoring, including laser scanners, UAVs, GNSS, and so on, in order to identify movements and identify patterns. You can see here different images by using into the project. And not only that, but we're lucky enough in order to verify that the persistent scattering information that we're getting from the SAR images, we're lining up with the in situ information that we had in the field. So you can see the importance, and we can see how we can use that observation in order to predict that using different models and different scenarios. Not only that, but using the radar and SAR images, we proceeded in installing corner reflectors all over Cyprus in order to have millimeter accuracy and trying to protect all the areas here in the archaeological and cultural heritage here in Cyprus. As I mentioned before, remote sensing and Earth observation can be really important and provide significant information in order to monitor. Here is an example using a spectral signature library that we can actually verify, the archaeological and monitor the cultural heritage sites through the Sentinel-2 images that we're getting, and we're trying to assess, and trying to find where these archaeological sites are, and monitor and identify where there might be even remains of archaeological sites. Another tools in order to monitor is, and everybody is using that, this is something that is common use right now, is using LiDAR on drones or photogrammetry by using cameras on drones. And this is important because now we can overlay the information that we're getting from the satellite images and getting the information from the low altitude vehicles like the drones in order to verify what we have in really high resolution and overlay that with the especially with the Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1 images that we're getting. Here you can see some examples of the high resolution and the really importance of monitoring cultural heritage sites. This is another area here in Cyprus, is the Curial archaeological area, which is another Unesco site. And not only that, but getting that information, getting and understanding the information using 3D models, using photogrammetry. And not only that, here you can see a 3D print that we actually printed and we have on the site that we can use for the visually impaired people, our, the people that they can't see, help them to understand what is there by touching and by feeling what is available in the cultural heritage sites. Another example, and that's what I mentioned before, with time series images. And here is one of the examples that we use in one of the churches north of Limassol in Gatopole Media, where we have different type of images here from our area of satellite from 1963 all the way to today. That here, unfortunately, 2014, there was a fire, but that fire uncovered the remains of the monastery that everybody was looking for. And you can see here in the right side that you can see actually a floor plan of the remains using satellite and aerial images. Now, coming back to Copernicus and coming back where Stelios and Daniele mentioned before, yes, we need information. We need information from the Copernicus cultural heritage coordination layer that it can be actually a driving factor in the Copernicus using space and sentinel data, and using it in order to monitor the built environment, the natural environment, air quality, which is another issue that is affecting our cultural heritage sites, in order to monitor any marine physical variables and any other indicators that they have to do with climate change. Another project that I'm working right now, and this is important, we got funded from the European Committee from the Horizon 2020, 15 million euros in order to create a center of excellence here in Cyprus. And our government funded us another 15 million, total of 30 million, in order to do to develop a center of excellence for Earth observation. One of these thematic areas that we included in this center of excellence, it was cultural heritage, among with others for atmosphere, agriculture, disaster risk reduction, and so on. But cultural heritage, we felt that this is something that we need to use, especially for Earth observation. Another project, and I'm closing with this, that will involve the past years is the Athena project. That was actually, we had partners from the National Research Council Institute, CNR from Italy, DLR, the German Aerospace Center in Germany, and other organizations in order to examine and set up a remote sensing for the Center of Cultural Heritage. And with that, I would like to end with a video. I don't know if I will be able to play it, but it looks like it plays. Just to see what we have done with remote sensing cultural heritage.
Aspects of identity, and that's the reason for which we really must protect it when we feel that it's in danger. It's a great era to be in terms of digital technology, embracing digital technologies and protecting cultural heritage, and that is necessary. We can monitor archaeological sites from space without touching or without destroying the archaeological site. Anything we do is an indestructible. If we can uncover different characteristics that we cannot see with the visible eye, which is area and really center for detecting very archaeological community. Whenever we get geometric shapes like rectangular or circular shapes, we know that there are some remains or there are some buildings or remains underneath those areas. Sometimes we can obtain so clear information by using the Earth observation, such as images or aerial images. Then archaeologists can decide to not explain this site. Now you have a lot of data. Now we're talking about big data. So we have to start thinking differently.
We can have a long-term view, so we can investigate the change over time. And what is important to do is also to have some systematic monitoring. This is the key for the future.
Cultural heritage here is alive.
Okay, thank you for your attention, and I would like again to thank Copernicus and the participants for actually being here in this workshop today.
Thank you so much, Kyriacos. Unfortunately, the audio was not coming through very well for the video, but in case you have a link to the video, feel free to paste it in the chat if you can. And it's a bit late, so I would like to ask the speakers whether they have some more minutes to stay. Otherwise, if they need to drop off, of course, for other commitments, of course, please feel free to do so. because we have some other pending questions. So in the meantime, I can answer some questions that were received from the audience. The first one was whether the presentation will be available. We will check with the speakers whether we can put their presentation online publicly, and if they will agree, we will put those for which we have permission on the web page of the event that I will now paste in the chat as well. Let me take the link. And in any case, we will send an email to registrants to inform you also, so when the slides will be there, and also when the recording will be available. And this is also to answer to other questions. So the recording will be available soon, either tomorrow or at the beginning of next week, in any case. And in the page that I've linked, it will be also possible to find the whole program of the event with the names of the speakers and the titles of their presentations. So these were some general questions. I will now ask the question that we have pending. Again, if the speakers need to drop off, please feel free to do so, of course, because we are already half an hour past the schedule. We had some questions for Daniele first. If you are there and you have a moment to answer the questions. So the first question was whether the mappa del rischio that you have shared, so the risk map has free access, so if it's freely available.
Yes, it's free available. The problem is that at the moment is only in Italian version.
Okay.
So this is the problem. But I put in the chat also the link directly to the WebGIS, so they can easily move along the Italian WebGIS to see heritage and related hazard to display some map or some catalog. Okay.
I see that it shouldn't be a problem. That it's just in Italian because the question was posed by an Italian participant, so that should be fine. Two more questions for Daniele. The first one is how do you gather the vulnerability data for cultural heritage and from where? And what are the type of sources for this information?
Vulnerability for cultural heritage is not an easy task. So we develop specific data sheet for vulnerability linked to specific hazards. So we have vulnerability, for example, for the seismic hazard, and we develop a data sheet in 3 different levels: first level, second level, third level. In each level, we collegate the percentage of expected damage linked to an expected earthquake of a specific intensity. So we have it's not easy to link vulnerability for all the components of heritage, no? So we have to define heritage to vulnerability to a specific hazard, okay? And actually, in the carta di rischio, we have seismic and flood, okay? And we are under the development, the landslide vulnerability hazard with respect to cultural heritage.
And then we have another question on this topic, still for you, Daniele. Are the vulnerability levels standardized at a national level with respect to every type of disaster risk, seismic, flood, etc.? You will now see the question
yes,
live.
At the moment, only for the seismic hazard, it's following a national rules, because after earthquakes, the Civil Protection Department use a specific data sheet in order to calculate all the damage linked to the seismic input for specific heritage, for church, for archaeological sites. So professionists go directly on the field and complete all these data sheet. The name is Scheda Hades for the seismic hazard.
Mm-hmm. And I think we have just received another question for Daniele, still for Daniele. Are the trends of climate change also incorporated for certain risks, for example, floods, or such as floods?
Yes, in the extraordinary plan of the cultural heritage monitoring at national level, we also developed this particular domain. So at the moment, we are trying to downscale the meteoclimatic forecasting model at European level to national level. So at the moment, we define risk scenario due to extreme events, temperature, drought, and so on, to define a specific risk scenario also at national scale. Also, this one is not an easy task, but we follow the rule of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. They fix some trend, no? 2050, 2100, and so on. So we use this trend to, for example, to develop the variation of the sea level rise and to collect all the heritage that are submerged in future in Italy, as well as the temperature or heavy rainfall or flood and so on. So also this part is incorporated and is under development in this pilot at national level of this monitoring project.
Thank you, Daniele. I think we don't have other questions for the moment. No hands raised, so I think we are coming to an end. So I would like to thank everyone, and before our participants leave, I would like to launch one last poll, just asking participants to rate and how useful they found the content of this webinar. And of course, I would like to thank the speakers for their very interesting presentations and for staying half an hour extra compared to the original schedule. I know it's a lot of time, but thank you very much for taking it and for providing these very nice presentations to our audience. Thank you again. And as I said, we will check with the speakers whether we can put their presentations online publicly. And in any case, an email will be sent to registrants with indications on where to find the available material, including the recording of this webinar. Thank you again, everyone, and I wish you all a very nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.